Jalen Brunson is expected to leave the Mavericks to ultimately sign with the New York Knicks. The Knicks are likely to offer Jalen Brunson a 4-year, 110 in the range of $110 million offer once free agency begins. Now, obviously, as of right now, Dallas has shown an unwillingness to match the 4-year commitment for $110 million. What they're willing to do is 5 years at $110 million, essentially the difference in $6 million per year. Okay, because under the Knicks' offer, Jalen Brunson would be making about $28 million per season, as opposed to the Mavericks that are trying to offer him $22 million over the course of 5 years. Now, just for some context and some comparison, Chris Paul's making about $28 million, 28.4. Kyle Lowry is making 28.3. So that's clearly where the Knicks are viewing Jalen Brunson. And the interesting thing about the Knicks, they've clearly made their intentions about Jalen Brunson flagrantly obvious. They hired his father, Rick Brunson, to be an assistant coach. In fact, the Knicks president, Leon Rose, has a relationship with the Brunson family. He represented Rick Brunson when he was a player, and when Leon Rose was an agent, he represented Jalen Brunson during the beginning of his career for Jalen, the first couple of seasons of his career before he became the president of the Knicks. So there is a history there. Not to mention, they just traded Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks to create additional cap space. They traded away Kemba to save an additional $9 million. They created about $30 million in cap space to go after and target Jalen Brunson. So Brunson has clearly been their number one offseason target. I think that when you look at some of the other free agents that are out there, yes, they were rumored to be interested in Kyrie, but that Kyrie option only became available potentially as of the last couple of days. The Utah Jazz have been pretty adamant about their unwillingness to trade away Donovan Mitchell. Not sure what the status is on Rudy Gobert, but they've been unwilling to trade away Donovan Mitchell. At least they haven't expressed anything that would make us believe that the Mavericks would have a package good enough to trade for a guy like Donovan Mitchell. So you take away those two guys, the only one remaining is Bradley Beal, and I think it's unlikely that the Wizards would trade Bradley Beal, not to mention who knows what's in the head of Bradley Beal, if he wants to stay, if he wants to leave, if he wants to sign the Supermax. There's uncertainty in that situation. So the only surefire bet for the Knicks was Jalen Brunson. This is the guy that we're after. This is who we think is the next big piece that we need to sign. And Jalen Brunson, listen, this is a young guy. He's 25 years old, and he's cashing in on the best season of his career. This was the best season he has had individually as an NBA player. He averaged 16 points per game, 4 rebounds, 5 assists in the regular season, 50% from the floor, 37% from the three-point range. And he especially shined in the postseason. Those first 3 games in the postseason against the Utah Jazz with no Luka Doncic, Jalen Brunson carried the Mavs. He led them to a 2-1 series lead, dropping 41 points, 31 points in those 2 victories. And in the entire postseason, his points jumped up from 16 in the regular season to 21.5 in the postseason. A couple more rebounds, 1 less assist, slightly dipped in the shooting percentage, but again, he was asked to do a lot more. And so he proved his worth in this past postseason for the Dallas Mavericks, and clearly he's been their second best player. He had been their second best player in last season. And so this is a guy that literally just joined the starting lineup on a permanent basis in December. And so for me, when I look at, okay, Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks, well, obviously Jalen Brunson, him leaving potentially Dallas to go sign with the Knicks has nothing to do with a dislike for Dallas, a dislike for Luka, or any of his teammates in the Dallas Mavericks organization. I think that This is a guy who's part of the same draft class as Luka Doncic. He appreciates Luka. He appreciates everything that Luka has meant for his career and the opportunities that Luka has afforded him. But this is a guy in Jalen Brunson who clearly believes that, listen, I'm appreciative of everything Luka has done for me in my career. I won't forget that. But he probably believes, based on how he performed in the postseason, that he deserves a shot to flourish in a slightly bigger role, even though, yes, he was the number two guy, but really it was a heliocentric offense with the Mavericks. It was pretty much run through Luka. And perhaps Jalen Brunson feels he can be a more integral piece with the Knicks. And he feels like he deserves the chance to do that. We've seen examples of this before. Jeremy Grant left the Nuggets to go get paid a little bit more and sign with the Detroit Pistons. Didn't necessarily work out, him being the guy, but he was afforded the opportunity to do it. This is almost the Bradley Beal argument, where we're asking guys to consider compromising generational wealth to stay in a good situation. And for Jalen Brunson, it's really a dollars and cents argument, because the Knicks would be offering him the same money over 4 years that the Dallas Mavericks would be offering over 5 years. So you shed an additional year, you preserve one more year, perhaps, of your prime form. You can cash in again later. So it's obviously a much more prudent basketball decision. I don't think it means that Jalen Brunson doesn't prioritize winning and he doesn't prioritize staying competitive. He believes that he's going to continue to ascend and he's going to build off of this momentum. It's almost like Dennis Schroeder when he was with the Lakers. The only difference is Jalen Brunson actually converted on his opportunity. We all remember Dennis Schroeder turned down the Lakers' 4-year, $84 million offer because he was seeking something in the range of $100 million plus. And obviously flamed out in the postseason, didn't have a great regular season. Jalen Brunson, it was the opposite. His stock rose. It appreciated in the postseason. And he already had a really good regular season, but he turned down a 4-year, $55 million offer midway through the year and instead bet on himself to perform well down the stretch. And he did. And now he's going to double his earnings. So it was a similar situation, but Jalen Brunson actually executed it. And so this is, I think, an important note is Jalen Brunson is obviously a really humble NBA player. By all accounts, seems to be a great guy. In fact, I actually have friends from college that went to high school with him. They're all from Chicago, and he shows a lot of humility. He's hardworking. He's committed everywhere he's been. In fact, he's still dating his high school sweetheart. They've been together since high school. So he's a very committed individual. And I think that character-wise, the Knicks would be gaining a tremendous piece from a character perspective. And I'm all for him getting his money. And as much money as he can collect, I am all for it. But I do think that offseason signings do reveal a lot about a team's intentions and what their goals are, what direction they're going in for the future. Because when you say, okay, what's the goal of the season? Is it to win games? Is it to be competitive? Is it to be entertaining? Is it to attract spectators? In the Knicks case, is it to build up and elicit some excitement coming into the season for the Knicks fans? I think that for the Knicks, because even if they do sign Brunson, I think their ceiling is probably, with this current roster, their ceiling is maybe scrapping the playoffs, maybe the play-in tournament. The Eastern Conference is loaded. I think there is an inherent ceiling with Jalen Brunson. I think they need another substantial piece to really make some noise. And I think that this would more be a desperate move to try and satisfy and allay a fan base that has been starving and salivating for something to root for. This is a Knicks fan base that has been dehydrated. They are standing in the middle of an oasis in the desert, and the well is leaking and draining rapidly. They're running out of things to root for. I think that the Knicks making the postseason 2 years ago was the biggest tease for that fan base because it gave them hope that perhaps there's a future around this core. And instead, they obviously flamed out. So I think that this is a desperate attempt, a flailing attempt to try and entice a fan base that needs something to cheer for. And again, this is no knock on Jalen Brunson. I absolutely think he is a fantastic player. I think he's a great character guy. I'm all for him getting all the money he can. But if you're the Knicks, if you're telling me, if you're trying to sell the fan base that your future core is RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickly, and Julius Randle, that's not exactly a recipe for a championship. That's a recipe to perhaps be entertaining and perhaps to still retain Spike Lee's specter at the Garden. But outside of that, I don't necessarily see what else you're going to do with Jalen Brunson and the Knicks. They need more than that. But again, happy for Brunson if that ultimately is the deal that he's offered because he deserves all the money that he can get.